Bright One by Lisajoy Sachs. Prologue. There are stories so painful, so weighted with loss, that speaking them aloud feels nearly impossible. And yet they must be told, passed gently from one generation to the next, woven into the fabric of consciousness, spoken even when the words shake with sorrow. This is one of those stories. It is rooted in truth, drawn from the lives of real people, my family. For the sake of privacy and the safety of those still living, some names have been changed, but the core of the story remains untouched. It is a legacy of love, courage, and survival. It begins with Jetti Finkelthal, my great grandmother. She was a woman of vigor and unwavering love. One of 9 siblings, she was a steady light at the center of her family. Before the Second World War, her pursuits revolved around the people she cherished most and the sanctuary they forged together. But war has a way of tearing through even the strongest bonds. After the Great War, Jetti's life turned down roads no woman should have ever faced. But she did not walk them alone. With the strength of her family beside her, she found the courage to endure what seemed agonizing. Together, they carried one another through grief, uncertainty, and sacrifice. One of those paths led her to leave behind a legacy for those she would never meet, especially the bright one in her life. A legacy not born from solitude, but from love. A love that was so fierce, unwavering, and deeply rooted in the bond of those who stood beside her. History does not bend for love, and war does not pause for family. Faced with agonizing choices and unimaginable loss, Jetti held fast to the future the only way she could, by making a sacrifice no mother should ever have to make. Sometimes keeping love alive means paying a price greater than anyone should be asked to tolerate. This book is the first in a series that honors a legacy of survival, courage, and defiance. It is not only Jetti's story, it is a testament to what it means to endure, to choose love over fear, and to carry memory forward, no matter how much it hurts. My great grandmother Jetti's determination echoes through generations. It lives in me now, and through these pages, it will live in you. Part 1, Chapter 1, Unchosen Future. Joel Wolflinker stepped off the train onto the frostbitten platform in Czernowitz, Romania, on December 9th, 1917, early in the morning, the first day of Hanukkah. A thick gray sky loomed over the city, blanketing it in a frigid silence that seemed to mirror his own trepidation. Visible clouds of breath escaped between his lips as he stood motionless, his small pack weighing heavily on his shoulder, staring at the streets he had once known intimately. The city had changed, just as he had. The vibrant boulevards of the past felt eerily subdued, and their lively inhabitants replaced by a muted stillness, a testament to the shadow the war had cast over the world. As Joel began his walk, a sudden wave of emotion overtook him, making his chest tighten and his vision blur with unshed tears. He blinked them away, and they immediately froze to his scruffy beard, like miniature icicles on tree branches. He pressed on, his boots crunching against the snow-covered cobblestones. His family was no longer here to greet him. They had fled to New York shortly after he left for the war, abandoning the home of his childhood and the warmth of their embrace. It was a pragmatic decision, one of survival, but the thought left him feeling untethered. Now all he had to hold on to was the hope of finding his wife he had married 3 years ago. He was queasy about Jetti waiting for him in her family's home, but he hadn't heard anything about the family since he left. Joel and Jetti had been married in June 1914, a union arranged by their families, a bond not just of love, but of necessity. Both the Linkers and the Finkelthals were prosperous Jewish families, rooted in the traditions and commerce of Czernowitz. Their marriage symbolized the fortification of two dynasties, a pact to weather the storms of an uncertain world. Joel had been called to serve in the army shortly after their wedding, leaving his young bride behind mere weeks after they had spoken their vows beneath the chuppah. The recollection of that day, of solemn promises and joyous celebrations, felt like a distant dream to him. The flashbacks of her face, framed by the glint of the summer sky on their wedding day, was etched into his mind like a treasured photograph. He remembered her smile, the way her hands trembled slightly when they touched his cheek on the morning he departed for war. Yet, even in its practicality, Joel had found tenderness in their brief time together, a feeling he had carried with him through the darkest days of the war. The war had stripped Joel of much. In the trenches, he had lived among the decay of death and the putrid stench of mangled bodies that lay rotting in the mud, their faces frozen in final agony. He had seen men reduced to fragments, their cries haunting Joel long after their death. The mutilated bodies of the wounded and dying still followed him in his dreams, an endless chorus that played in his mind during the still hours. He had witnessed comrades torn apart by artillery fire, their blood soaking into the frozen earth, and had felt his own humanity erode with every life lost. The war had reduced him to a creature of survival. He no longer had the innocence and ambition that once defined him. He had survived, but at what cost? The boyish optimism he previously wore like a second skin had been replaced by a heavy, weary understanding of life's fragility. Joel had spent the last 3 years in a world defined by foxholes and death, but now, after months of arduous travel following the collapse of Romanian supply lines in October, he was finally home. Each step brought him closer to her, but doubt clung to him like the grime of the battlefield. He had missed Jetti fiercely, her laughter and fearlessness haunting his thoughts during long nights in the dismal barracks and bloodied fields. The vision of her smile had been his solace, an aurora piercing the suffocating darkness of war. Yet as Joel meandered through the city streets now, the certainty he once held faltered. War had tested them both, leaving scars he couldn't yet measure. What if Jetti no longer recognized the man she had married? What if he couldn't recognize himself? He thought of her fortitude, her unwavering endurance that had always been his anchor. Jetti had been resourceful, practical, and fiercely determined, qualities that had reassured him when he left. She couldn't endure whatever hardships that came her way. He pictured her tending to the roses in the garden behind her home, her hands deftly weaving life into the seasons yet to come. But now that belief was clouded by his own doubts. Could she fold faith in the man who had returned, broken and unsure? And more troubling, did he even deserve the faith she had so steadfastly placed in him? As Joel approached the mansion, his steps slowed, each one weighed by a mixture of longing and unease. The grand estate loomed ahead, its elegant facade softened by his years away. The gray clouds of dawn were retreating, their somber veil lifting to reveal a sky touched by the pale blue promise of sunlight. The first golden rays slipped through, illuminating the fine details: frozen ivy creeping along the stone walls, the glint of brass on the ornate knockers, and the intricate carvings framing the imposing doorway. The sight of the mansion stirred conflicting emotions within him. It was a place he used to find solace in, a sanctuary filled with laughter and security, yet now it stood as a threshold to the unknown, a space between his past and a future he feared might reject him. His hands trembled as he reached for the knocker, its cold metal biting into his palm. The rhythmic pounding of his heart seemed almost deafening, and he wondered fleetingly if its frantic beat might be heard through the heavy wooden door. Doubt clawed at him, settling heavily on his chest, threatening to unmoor his determination. He swallowed hard, the lump in his throat thick and unyielding. The musical chatter of birds, emboldened by the clearing skies, seemed an almost cruel contrast to the turmoil within him. Gathering his courage, Joel closed his eyes for a brief moment, willing himself to steady. Would he be able to sustain her scrutiny? Could she look past his scars etched across his face? Could she endure the demons he carried home in silence? These questions repeated in his mind, each one a jagged edge. He exhaled, his breath shaky but resolute, and lifted the knocker, knowing the answers would come only with the opening of that door. When the door opened, the world seemed to hold its breath. Standing before Joel was not the woman he had longed for, but a young girl he didn't recognize. She couldn't have been more than 14 or 15, with short brown hair, cut in a modern, almost boyish style that seemed startlingly different from what he remembered of Czernowitz fashion. The girl's sharp, inquisitive eyes regarded him for a moment, and then a wide grin spread across her face, as if she pieced together who he was. "Sir, you're Mr. Linker, are you?" she asked, her voice brimming with excitement. Joel nodded, his voice crackling in his throat as he remembered. "Yes, I'm Joel Wolf Linker." "Oh, she'll want to see you. Wait here." "No, no. Come with me to the library," the girl exclaimed, grabbing his arm with surprising force, pulling him inside. Joel barely had time to drop his warm bag by the door before she was leading him down the wide, polished hallway. Her enthusiasm was contagious, but Joel's heart pounded with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. "You've been gone so long," the girl chattered as they walked, her words tumbling out as though she couldn't contain them. "We've heard so much about you. Oh, wait till Mrs. Jetti sees you." She ushered him into the library with a dramatic flourish, gesturing for him to sit. "Wait here. I'll fetch someone." With that, she dashed out of the room, her footsteps clicking against the marble floors. Joel stood in the doorway for a moment, overwhelmed by the opulence of the library before him. The room was nothing short of magnificent, a testament to the Finkelthal's wealth and refinement. Towering mahogany bookshelves lined with walls, each crammed with hundreds of books in a dazzling array of languages: Hebrew, German, Romanian, French, English, and others he couldn't identify. A rolling tall ladder was attached to the upper shelves, hinting at the library's depth and the importance the family placed on knowledge and culture. The floor was covered in a lush, richly woven rug, its intricate patterns of crimson and gold reminiscent of far off lands. In the center of the room stood an ornate writing desk, its surface inlaid with delicate floral macrame. The chairs surrounding it were upholstered in deep emerald velvet, their carved arms and legs gleaming with golden leaf. Above, a grand chandelier hung from the high ceilings, its crystals catching the weak winter sunlight that streamed through the tall arched windows. The scent of old paper, polished wood, and a hint of something floral lingered in the air, comforting and elegant. Joel ran his fingers along the spine of a nearby book, the leather smooth and cool beneath his touch. He felt out of place in this grandeur, a soldier wearing the strain of war in his tall boots and threadbare coat. But he could dwell too long on this unease. The door opened again, and before him a flurry of movement interrupted his thoughts. He had lived here for a brief 3 weeks of their marriage, yet standing inside the mansion now, he could hardly recall it being this grand. Had the passage of 3 years transformed it so dramatically, or was it his memory, dulled by time and shadowed by all he had endured? Or perhaps it was simply that he had changed, his perspective shaped by years of hardship, making the once familiar now feel distant and imposing. The kitchen staff bustling in, carrying a tray with a sterling coffee pot, a small pitcher of milk, and two porcelain cups with the saucers. They set everything down on a low table near the fireplace, their faces alight with curiosity and barely contained excitement. "Please, Mr. Linker, sit," one of them urged, pouring him a cup of steaming coffee. The aroma filled the room, rich and inviting. Joel sat, gripping the delicate cup in hands roughened by years of war. The heat seeped into his fingers, but his mind was elsewhere. He stared into the swirling mix of coffee, milk, and sugar, wondering where Jetti was. The staff exchanged knowing glances, whispering among themselves about the long-awaited reunion of these two lovers. Joel caught snippets of their conversation, words of surprise, excitement, and even a hint of mischief. It was clear they knew who he was, and they were just as eager as he was for the moment when Jetti would walk through that door. For now, Joel waited, the library's elegance surrounding him, offering both comfort and a poignant reminder of the life he had left behind. The ornate grandfather clock in the hall marked each passing second, a steady ticking echoing, like a slow, relentless march. Despite the ache of waiting, there was something about this space, the collection of books, or its promise, that made him feel as though he stood on the threshold of something extraordinary, something that might finally mend the fractures left by war. Chapter 2. Flutter of the Heart. Time seemed to stretch unbearably, each tick amplifying Joel's anticipation. His palms were damp, his heart beat loud in his ears. When at last Jetti appeared in the doorway, she took his breath away. Her presence radiant and dreamlike. Her periwinkle dress flowed gracefully to her ankles, the silken fabric catching the golden morning streaming through the tall windows. The hue of the dress seemed to embrace her, highlighting her delicate skin. Her blonde hair, styled in cascading waves, framed her face with effortless perfection, each strand illuminated as if painted by a master hand. She seemed to shimmer, with an ethereal beauty, a vision so strikingly real it felt almost impossible to behold. Joel's heart clenched. She was here, luminous and unbroken, and more beautiful than he had ever dared to remember. Behold, behind her, the grand library spread in a stately display of mahogany bookshelves that reached toward the ceiling. Dust motes floated in the beams of sunlight, their lazy drift a stark contrast to the tempest of emotions in Joel's chest. His pulse quickened, and for a moment time itself seemed to halt. Jetty stood there, poised, her hands resting at her sides, the space between them charged with years lost and words left unsaid. Joel's throat tightened, his longing a tangible thing, as though the vast book-lined room could scarcely contain the depth of it. Jetty stepped back slightly, her eyes scanning Joel with a mix of disbelief and wonder. The man before her was not the Joel she had once known, the young carefree boy who had been so eager to take on the world. That boy had been full of energy, his laughter infectious, his eyes alight with the spark of endless possibilities. But the man who now stood before her, his head slightly bowed, was someone entirely different, a stranger, yet somehow still hers. Looking over his face, taking in the changes that time and war had wrought. His once smooth skin was now marred by scars, one that traced a jagged line just above his brow, and another, smaller but less telling, along his cheek. His beard was thick and unkempt, streaked with hints of silver strands that had been there before. It framed his face, making him look older, harder, and almost unrecognizable. Yet it was just his physical appearance that had changed. The brightness she had always loved in his eyes, the mischievous glint that hinted at his endless optimism, was gone, replaced by a weary dullness that made her heart instantly ache. Judy noticed how thin he had become, his frame wiry and muscular from years of hard labor and thin to little sustenance. His shoulders, though broad than she remembered, slightly stooped, as if carrying an invisible weight too heavy to bear. His hands caught her attention. Once smooth, they were now rough and callous. The hands of a man who had fought and survived in ways she could only imagine. She wanted to reach for them, to feel their harshness, and let him know that she understood, even if only a little. And on that note, everybody, we will pause here. Now, just from the get go, this book already is fascinating. Now, I had the opportunity to interview Lisajoy Sachs earlier this year, and hearing her story firsthand, I was instantly blown away by the message Bright One was trying to tell and the story she wanted to tell others. And honestly, I think a lot of people are going to resonate heavily with this book. It is such a powerful story of family, survival, love, and more that in the first two chapters alone, we get a sense of what her family went through after the Great War and eventually into the Second World War. Now, if you enjoy historical fiction such as this, Bright One by Lisajoy Sachs is definitely the book for you. It is written well, it flows very easily, it really draws you in, and really sets the tone that each character has. Joel and Jetti, from the first two chapters, are incredibly written, and I cannot wait to see what the book has in store for them down the road through the years. As always, this gets an instant 5 out of 5 rating here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. And if you'd like to see my interview with Lisajoy Sachs a little bit more, click on the video above. And if you are an author, editor, narrator, PA, or any other creative in the industry and want to be featured on the channel, click the link down below to apply to my Indie Spotlight packages. I am still accepting guests for April as well as the rest of the year. And as a special announcement, I am also going to be in LA in April, the LA Times Festival of Books. I'll be tabling at booth 128. So if you're going to be in LA on the 18th, that is where I will be. I'll be tabling from 10 to 12:30 and 3 to 5:30. Thank you, everybody, for your love and support. And we have one final author interview coming up later this week. And until next time, this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. Wishing you all a wonderful Sunday wherever you are in the world. Take care, and we'll see you all very soon. Bye.